So we were just watching the trailer for Stand Up Guys, which is a movie that Fisher directed and is in town to premiere last night at the film festival. And before we start, I want to point out that I still consider you a Chicagoan. You born here and lived here till you were 12, moved to New York City. You won an Academy Award. You were in some of my favorite movies, Short Circuit, Hackers, and Flamingo Kid, which I think everybody should rewatch. It's so good. Welcome to the Chicago Ideas Week stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We had our screening last night of the movie, so I'm a little hungover. So I'm going to try to put the energy out there. We had a big night with the guys. Try to drag them along here, but they're all still sleeping. No, I'm just kidding. They had to leave, but
We're talking today at Edison Talks about ideas and experimentation, and could you tell us about the story of this movie and how long does it take from when a movie like this starts, inception, to when it's done, and what does that look like along the way?
This I wasn't involved with at the beginning of this movie, but before I had gotten involved, it had been. They'd been trying to make the movie for about 5 or 6 years. There were other directors attached and other actors attached, and it just kept falling apart as movies tend to do. It's very hard to get a movie actually made nowadays. Even though there's so many out there, you would think that's not true, but it is quite difficult. And this film just happened. I got asked to direct it. Chris Walken was maybe going to be in it. That was all they told me. I called up Chris, and I said, I'm going to now maybe direct it. Is that okay? And he's like, yeah, sure, Fisher, it's okay. And who else? Who's in it? And I said, I'm going to try to get, somebody that would be good. And fortunately, I've known Al Pacino for a long time, and I called Al, and he agreed to be in it. And that's as soon as I had Al and Chris together, then it took off. And I just finished the film a week ago. I just finished color correcting it, and we presented it last night at the film festival. So once we got it going, but getting it to that place took 7 or 8 years. And
getting that level of talent together, what's it like to are you involved as a director in trying to convince the actors to do it, or how does that work?
It's a very painful process to cast a movie. Nowadays, when you're going after big stars, it's not easy, There's a lot of people that want to do it, but you always kind of want other people that not necessarily want to do it, so you have to do a lot of phone calls, a lot of work, a lot of meetings, a lot of what's my vision. It was my first studio feature, so, but Chris and Al and I had known each other. I knew Chris a little from the theater, being an actor. Actors like working with directors often, so I got lucky, and here we are.
Talk about, let's shift gears a little bit.
Right.
This is one type of movie, but I think where I know you, or my recent, awe of what you've been able to do is in the documentary space, which is a whole different area, and you won an Academy Award for The Cove, which is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Talk about that, and talk about the difference of making a documentary film and how that entrepreneurial route happens versus this more traditional route.
Well, it's funny he mentions entrepreneurial, which is why I think this is happening. It's
one of the reasons.
Partly about entrepreneurial endeavors, and I am probably one of the least entrepreneurial people I know. I've lost money in pretty much everything I've tried to do outside of what I know. And when documentaries you don't go into to make money, but if you are touched by something and have a real vision and a passion for it, it's when they usually succeed. And The Cove was just an example of something I believed in and wanted to get involved in, and because of my beliefs in how we're eating up the oceans, how we're poisoning the oceans, and how I don't believe in slaughtering dolphins, whatever your cause is. And it was an incredible trip. It was a journey that I loved taking. I didn't go do it to make any money, but I had probably one of the greatest experiences of my life. And actually, Robert Altman, the great filmmaker who recently passed away, I got to work on his last film, and he said to me, Fisher, the key to what I do is the experience. I don't do it for the accolades or anything. I do it because I love what I do, and I love the experience. And I find that when I'm doing it for that reason, it's successful. So whether it's a documentary or a feature film.
How do you think we as a society get documentary films more appreciated?
It's tough. You know, I just was one of the executive producers of a documentary on Woody Allen. I don't know if you people saw it on American Masters. It was an incredibly interesting film about Woody. And I convinced somebody to put up a lot of money thinking, oh, Woody Allen, it's going to make a fortune. And even that is, you know, it's very tricky to get people to watch your films. But there are, with Netflix and with airplanes now, you can get, you know, there are so many more outlets to watch your film. Getting a documentary in a cinema is very difficult.
Yeah.
And like one of my favorite films last year was made here, The Interrupters, which you
we had last year.
You had last year. I got to
Week.
meet with them, and I was like the biggest cheerleader trying to get that in movie theaters. Steve James, I think, is one of the greatest living filmmakers, and it's tough to get them out there on the cinemas, in the cinemas. But I think people are interested in them, and you know, they don't make a lot of money. Ironically, the film about Obama that just came out, the anti-Obama film, is a huge grossing documentary. And those filmmakers, I didn't want to see the film, I had no interest in it, but it made a fortune. And sadly, that was the kind of film that made money. Yet, you see a movie like The Interrupters, which, you know, struggles. So
the last speaker in the previous session was a professor from Harvard who talked about money as a motivator. And it's interesting to hear your perspective on that, because every time I hear about documentary film producing, I hear philanthropy or charity in the same sentence. And it sounds like there's no easy fix.
No, and I was also, I went, at one point I was pretty much focusing on producing movies, feature films, and I started out, we did 5 little ones, and we got out of the gate strong with a movie called In the Bedroom about 10 years ago, which we made for $2 million, and it ended up, it was a script we loved, and me and my partner were passionate about it, and it ended up grossing $40 million and getting 5 Oscar nominations, and it was a big success. And then we said, oh, we want to make more movies that make money. So as opposed to doing scripts that we believed in, that we felt we had to make, we started trying to make movies to make money, and that's when we were the worst, everything fell apart. Every movie we did was, I thought was terrible. And and they didn't make money. So not only did I make shitty films, I didn't make any money. And I was like, oh, I gotta rethink my life. Something's wrong. And so it taught me. Now I'm, you know, I'm not making that much money, but I'm making a good living, certainly, and I'm doing things I enjoy, which I really love.
And that's what I think that one of your gifts is that you're a master storyteller. And I know that you're working on 3 stories right now, and they're all fascinating. And my hope is that we can talk a little bit about each one of them before you have to go. One is about Sylvia Earle, who also spoke at Chicago Ideas Week. Can you tell us about what the project is?
Yeah, I've been making this movie, I think, since the early 70s. It's taken so long. Sylvia Earle is, I don't know if people know her here, but she's her nickname is Her Deepness, because she's been deeper than any other person in a suit, in a single suit, not in a sub. And she was head of NOAA years ago, and is a scientist, a biologist, an oceanographer, a mother, and she's about in her mid to late 70s, depending on what day you ask her. I've been following her and filming her. She's trying to create marine protected areas around the world. Less than 1% of the ocean is protected. 12% of the land on Earth is protected. So her goal is to try to set up these areas that no commercial fishing, no dredging, no oil digging around the world.
And you're going to tell her story.
We're telling her story and going to these places, and she's wild. I'm going scuba diving with her in a few weeks to hopefully finish this movie before 2075. Documentaries take a long time.
By the way, side question, how much does it cost to make a documentary? What's the range?
Well, they can range from $100,000 to, the Cove was quite expensive because of the cameras and going to Japan. That cost, you know, a few $1 million. Though the Sylvia Earle and the Cove were monies that were donated by very wealthy individuals who care about the environment.
To the next project you're working on and story that you're telling, very different than Sylvia Earle, is Ginger Baker.
Ginger Baker was a drummer from a band called Cream, which was Jack Bruce, Eric Clapton, and this madman named Ginger Baker. And it's called Beware Mr. Baker. Jay Bulger is a young filmmaker that we met and came to my company, Andrew Karshen, Eric Gordon, and I, and asked us to produce this film and finance the film. And it's a story of an absolute mad, drug-crazed, polo-playing drummer who, it's kind of a raucous ride for 90 minutes. He brought Fela Kuti's music to the West. He lived in Nigeria, was his drummer, started record labels there, and then he had a band called Blind Faith, and it's a wild film that opens in Chicago in February.
Third project, fascinating to me. One of the great American authors is Philip Roth, and you're digging into that subject matter. Yeah,
my next feature film after this, and I'm starting it already, is called, it's based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel American Pastoral, by the great writer Philip Roth. I really recommend you all to read the book or wait a year and a half till the movie comes out and see that. Maybe wait for the movie if you haven't read it. Then you won't put the pressure on me that so it's a story that spans from basically 1945 to 1993 about the perfect American Jewish family, half Jewish. This man called the Swede, he's a guy who looks like a Swede, but he's actually Jewish, marries Miss New Jersey, 1949, perfect life. They have a daughter, and she starts to develop a bit of a stutter, and as time goes on, she starts to get angrier and angrier, and the Vietnam War is happening, and she ends up becoming a terrorist in essence, and blowing up the general store, killing the guy at the store, and basically blowing up this family's life. And
it's an amazing
the
book.
American, yeah. So it's a big book, it's a big responsibility, but we got to take risks. So.
Speaking of, I'll ask the question I wanted to ask, but I agree that you're in the business of taking risks, and I've got a lot of respect for that. With our remaining time, speaking of books, tell me about your favorite book and why it's your favorite book, and why we should all think about reading it.
Well, my favorite book, I always come back to this book. I was 18 years old, and I was becoming obsessed with just my career and my life, and I still am very manic at times, running, doing many projects. And my godfather gave me a book, and he said, "Beware you don't become this." And the book was called What Makes Sammy Run by Bud Schulberg. Bud Schulberg wrote On the Waterfront, he wrote A Face in the Crowd, and many, many books. And it's my favorite book because it's kind of a warning that you can actually make all the money you want, get all the girls you want, live that life that you always wanted, but it still doesn't make you happy. And that really the only thing that can make you happy, in a big way, that's what the message of the book was. And it's hilariously funny and entertaining, and really a time capsule of Hollywood and New York City from like 1920 to 1950, which is a great time that I love. And I guess that's my favorite book.
Beautiful way to end. Fisher Stevens, thank you for joining us at Chicago Ideas Week.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys.